On November 8, 1961, the Duperrault family, including Dr. Arthur Duperrault, age 40, his wife Jean, age 38, and their three children, Brian, age 14, Terry Jo, age 11, and Renee, age 7, embarked on a week-long chartered cruise from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to the Bahamas aboard the 60-foot ship, the Bluebelle. The family lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Arthur had planned for many years to take everyone to Florida for a family cruise. As an optometrist, Arthur had saved for a long time to make this dream trip come true. At the helm of their ship was Captain Julian Harvey, age 44, a seasoned sailor and reportedly a friend of Arthur. Lots of people liked Julian Harvey, as he was a familiar figure around the Florida ports, and he had served 16 years in the Air Force. Harvey was accompanied by his 34-year-old wife of 4 months, Mary Dean. The family began to spend their time snorkeling and collecting shells on the white and pink beaches that they stopped at. The voyage was going well, filled with the joy and laughter of a family on holiday. But beneath the surface, a sinister plot was brewing. Captain Harvey had been hired by the vessel's owner, businessman Harold Pegg, to take any tourists to sea upon their desired cruises in exchange for $300 a month and free accommodation aboard the vessel. Harvey, plagued by financial woes and a history of suspicious incidents involving a previous wife and multiple sunken vessels, all resulting in substantial insurance payouts, had recently taken out a significant life insurance policy on his new wife, Mary Dean. On the night of November 12th, just as the Bluebelle was making its return journey to Florida, Terry Jo headed below deck to her sleeping quarters in a small cabin at the back of the boat around 9 p.m. Then 11-year-old Terry Jo awoke to a sound that would forever haunt her: screams. Her 7-year-old sister Renee would usually be sleeping with her, but that night, Renee was with her parents and brother on the deck. Disoriented, Terry Jo stumbled from her cabin to the deck to find a scene of unspeakable horror. Her mother, Jean, and brother, Brian, lay dead in a pool of blood. Captain Harvey was there, and when Terry Jo tried to ask what happened, he shoved the terrified girl and told her to go back to her cabin. She did as she was told, but after a while, the ship started filling with water, and that water was reaching her bed. Harvey then entered her cabin with what appeared to be a rifle in his right hand. The two made eye contact, but Harvey did not shoot her. He simply returned above deck. She knew she had to escape. When she finally made her way back to the deck, the captain confirmed to Terry Jo that the ship was indeed sinking. In fact, Harvey was deliberately sinking the ship. Captain Harvey, calm amidst the chaos, handed Terry Jo a rope attached to the dinghy. But in her panic state, the rope slipped from her grasp. As the dinghy drifted away, Harvey made a decision. He dove overboard, swimming towards the dinghy, leaving Terry Jo alone on the rapidly sinking Bluebelle. As the Bluebelle succumbed to the waves, Terry Jo, even in her stunned state, remembered the small cork life float that was kept in the main cabin. She quickly untied it and pushed it into the water as she climbed on top. She could hear the moan of the wind, but she could see nothing. The heavy clouds of the night denied her the light of the stars. The next day, the small float was starting to disintegrate, and she had no choice but to balance on the edges of the float or hang her feet in the water. A small plane flew above her, and she waved frantically, but the pilot did not see her. She was floating in the northwest Providence Channel, which soon would drift north with the Gulf Stream, and then east, carrying her across the wide Atlantic to the British Isles. For 3.5 agonizing days, Terry Jo drifted on the vast, unforgiving ocean. No food, no water, wearing only a thin white shirt with her pants. Scorching sun by day, chilling cold by night. Downpours of rain. Porpoises that swam beside her gave her hope. At this point, Terry Jo was suffering from heat stroke and she was badly sunburned. Meanwhile, Captain Harvey was rescued by an oil tanker only a day after the incident on November 13th. He was reportedly found with the body of 7-year-old Renee on his dinghy. He spun a tale to the Coast Guard in Miami of a sudden storm, a broken mast, and a fire that engulfed the Bluebelle. He claimed everyone else was injured and trapped or vanished among the waves, and he was only able to find and pull the unconscious Renee from the water. For a fleeting moment, his lie held. Then at last, on November 16th, Terry Jo awoke to see a giant shape in front of her. She saw people waving from a boat and then arms lifting her to safety. She was in critical condition. This rescue was thanks to a Greek freighter who had an officer that spotted a tiny speck on the horizon. It was Terry Jo, barely clinging to life. The captain ordered the freighter's engine stopped and a life raft lowered. After being pulled from the ocean, Terry Jo was taken by helicopter to a Miami hospital. When Julian Harvey was informed that the young girl had survived, maybe the thought of potential jail time or the truth and the weight of his monstrous crimes became too much to bear, Julian Harvey checked into a motel in Miami on November 17th and took his own life. Before Terry Jo recovered enough to tell her story, Harvey's friends thought his suicide had come from enduring one tragedy too many in his lifetime. In 1949, he had survived when his speeding car crashed through a bridge in northern Florida. The car plunged into a canal, killing his second wife and her mother. Harvey miraculously escaped. He had endured many injuries from the Air Force that eventually forced his retirement. He had also survived various boating mishaps over the years, where he often received a payout of insurance money. In total, he had been married 6 times. The sinking of the Bluebelle, his friends surmised, was the last thing that Harvey could stand. Terry Jo's miraculous rescue shattered Harvey's fabricated story. The subsequent inquiry painted a chilling picture. Investigators concluded that Harvey had murdered his wife, Mary Dean, likely for the insurance money. When Arthur probably witnessed the crime, Harvey, in a desperate attempt to cover his tracks, then murdered the entire family. Terry Jo spent 11 days in a Miami hospital. She then returned to Green Bay and was taken in by family. She didn't talk to the media about the tragedy of losing her family for over 20 years. She eventually shared her full story almost 50 years later in her book, Alone, Orphaned on the Ocean, which shares her journey from the depths of despair to finding healing.